Okay, so welcome again. And as I said, this is an odd situation and an odd year. But thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. I am Mr. Collins, the principal at Alexandra, and I find it very odd that I've not had the opportunity to meet parents as yet. And I find that probably the hardest thing so far is I've not had that contact that you would normally have with parents at this time of the year. So as you're aware, we started the year under the COVID restrictions, and we had to try lots of different things to make sure that we were keeping your families as safe as we possibly can. And that's the point that we we keep talking to the students about, that the danger of COVID, as we see it here, was not so much amongst the children, because it appears that COVID thankfully touches the students quite lightly in terms of their age range, but it's of course the virus jumping from one student to another and taking that virus home to your houses where you have elderly relatives or relatives that are vulnerable. And that's been our constant message since we started the year. It's about keeping our community safe. I do like to remind the students that I am over 50 and therefore I am in the vulnerable group, and sometimes that helps them remind themselves of what they're trying to do. So we started in our bubbles, and year 10 were in the tower block. So majority of their lessons were in the tower block at the top of the site. They had their break time separate from other groups, and we did exceptionally well to keep the bubbles separate. We only had 1 or 2 incidents with students who decided that they were going to cross bubbles. I think we dealt with that very well. But we were fully aware, as the students were, of the oddity of coming in on the bus with students from different year groups, then being kept completely separate from those different year groups in school, and then travelling home again on the bus with those students. Then as we came up to Christmas, we started to have what is known as a bubble burst, which means that we have a positive case somewhere in the year group. And at that point, Public Health England took a very safe approach, and they would recommend that we would close bubbles. And I believe year 10 was the only year that the bubble didn't burst. It was the only year group that we didn't have a positive case inside the time that we were in school together, and there was no reason for us to send the students home to self-isolate. My understanding is that's no longer the case. Over Christmas, a number of cases arrived in year 10. And then we moved into Christmas. And of course, Christmas for us all was very strange, because we suddenly went into tier 4, and we all had to change our Christmas celebrations and our plans, and recognize that we were now going to be having Christmas with our immediate family. Unless you're in a bubble with your other family members, it meant that I wasn't going to see my mum, and my wife wasn't going to see her mum, and we went into Christmas. And as we were going into Christmas, we were told by the government that I was going to be setting up a test centre to mass test all of the students when they arrived back in school in January, which was an interesting thought to take into a Christmas holiday. As a person that's trained in education, I hadn't quite envisioned at any point that I was going to be running a test centre for COVID. But we went into Christmas. I then made the decision to contact all parents on the 30th of December. I didn't want to contact you on New Year's Eve about the return to school, so I left it as late as I possibly could, only to be superseded by the announcement on New Year's Eve, where I had to change everything again and let you know there had been a change to the return to school, which I had to do on New Year's Eve, which I can only apologise for. But that's obviously when we got the message. And then, of course, we returned on the 4th, where we had another larger change coming through, which was the closure of all schools to stop the spread of COVID. So at that point, we had a very short amount of time to set up a number of things. We had to set up the community school. We had to set up the test centre for the community school, and we had to get the remote learning going, and ensuring that teachers had the time to now change some of their lesson plans away from what they thought they were going to be preparing for to remote learning. And of course, that has meant there's been some teething issues and some issues with our systems and so on. And we recognised that the way that we were reporting students missing from lessons was probably not received in the best way it possibly could, and therefore we've taken the feedback from parents and just adjusted the way that we're reporting that. But the reason we're reporting each lesson is simply because we want to make sure the students are with us for 5 periods a day, because it's the most important thing that we can possibly do is keep them in lessons with us and learning. So that's how we've started. In the community school, we have approximately 70 students in at this moment in time. They're in groups of about 10 or 11 in separate classes. And again, we keep those groups separate from each other. They're tested every 5 days where we have permission to test. And that enables us again to keep any kind of bubble breaks to the absolute minimum. Staff also are as part of that testing regime as well, so that we know who we've got in the school. But just what some parents might not be aware of is that the teaching staff aren't in school at the moment. The teaching staff are online doing remote learning. And those of us who are in school at the moment are the members of my senior leadership team and myself, and then members of our pastoral teams. And what they are is supporting the students inside a classroom, but the students are getting on with the remote learning that your child is doing at home. So they're just doing that remote learning in school. The other announcement that we had to deal with was the cancellation of all the exams. And so our year 11s and year 13s have been quite anxious about that. And unfortunately, we still don't know quite how it's going to look. So we are ensuring that those students are constantly handing work in, constantly sending work in to us. Lots of little assessments that we're doing, and we are going to be using all of that work to create what's called a centre assessed grade. But I think for all of our students, it's a huge opportunity to constantly work at improving, and that means they can get towards the best grade they possibly can without that complete unknown at the end where it's an exam. So those are the things that we've been working on. I would really like to thank you as a parental group because of the feedback you've been giving us. It is something that I, as a principal, really appreciate. I think the more feedback that I can get from parents, the better that I can make the school for you and your children. And so please keep feedback coming in. It's something that I do embrace. If I'm not 100% sure, I'll always give you a call just to make sure that I've got it right as well. So we'll keep going with that. That would be excellent. So I'm just going to quickly check Miss Horton is with us. Miss Horton is with us. And so
yes, I am.
Thank you, Mrs. Horton. Mrs. Horton is going to just talk you through the remote learning and the expectations of how that works and what you'll see and notice at home. And again, if you've got any questions, please use the chat room facility, but there will be an opportunity at the end for you to raise a hand and ask a question. So Mrs. Horton.
Okay, so good afternoon. So in terms of the remote learning policy, so the students, you can expect your son or daughter to follow their timetable as it would be in school. Each of their teachers has planned a lesson for them for an hour long. However, the structure of the lesson is likely to vary. So, for example, and this will depend obviously on what the learning is, the nature of the subject. So, for example, every lesson will start with a teacher welcoming the students in the class. So that is a given. So every lesson will start with a teacher on Teams, and they will welcome the class and they will register them. And that is where we get that's how we know that they're attending and engaging in the lessons, and that's where we get our attendance data from. The teacher will then explain the learning and the new learning for the student. They may model an answer or an activity that the student is then to complete, and that they will ask questions of the students, calling them by name to check they've understood what the teacher has just been saying for them. Now, this part of the lesson may be 10 minutes, it may be 15 minutes. The students will then be given a task to independently practice that learning. And this independent task may be a 10-minute task, a 15-minute, half an hour to 45 minutes. Then the teacher, so depending on the length of that task, the teacher is will often stay online unless that's not possible, so the students can come back and ask questions of the teacher. And then the lesson, if it is required in terms of checking that learning, will end with the teacher putting the students back together online on Teams. However, that may not be the case. So the teacher may set the learning up in the first 10 minutes, and the students might then be given the next 50 minutes to work on that piece of work, of which they will then submit to the teacher. But every lesson will start on Teams. The students will continue to be learning new material and continue to be covering the curriculum. So it is important that the student engages in the work. Each of their class, as you've probably seen, has an area on Teams, and the student can post in the chat questions around that work if the teacher has enabled that to happen. So that's our remote learning, how it will look. Work is also still set on Show My Homework. So in the instance, and there may be instances where a teacher is unable, they may not be well to teach that lesson, then the work will be set on Show My Homework as well as on Microsoft Teams. So if at some stage the student says that they've finished the work that's been set, then please direct them first of all to Show My Homework, where additional work may have been set. Now, obviously, we also encourage our students to go above and beyond the work maybe that's set, and so therefore there are also resources to be found on. The student can access all the ARC resources that are perfectly aligned to our curriculum called ABC Spark, and they have a link to that. And Ms. Collins, I will be sending a letter out shortly with the details of where to find these resources. And I would also direct you to the Oak National Academy, which is an online kind of school that the government and teachers have put all the work together. The government set it up, but the teachers have designed all the lessons, and you could also direct them there if so wish, if they want to do extra and learn more about what they've been doing during the school day. Are there any questions? Please either raise your hand or write anything in the chat.
Juliet, I'm just gonna I see that Mr. Burton here has asked a question. Mr. Burton, if you don't mind just waiting till the end, it's just that we've got Mr. Scaife to also talk about attendance and behaviour and safeguarding. So Mr. Burton, if you're okay, we'll come back to you first at the end, if that's all right.
That's no problem. Thank you, Mr. Collins.
Thank you. Okay, so Mr. Scaife, if you can give us some input as well in terms of how we've set up the pastoral systems and so on, that would be great.
Good evening, everyone. I hope everyone's safe and well. Firstly, it's important to thank you in advance for ensuring that your children stay in the healthy routines whilst being in lockdown. We know firsthand from the first lockdown that it's these normal routines and these normal habits which help to ease the hardship experience from being in lockdown, which ultimately reduces the onset of boredom and loneliness and mental health issues. So thank you for insisting upon those habits. We're all, as you just heard from Mrs. Horton, we're working really, really hard in the background to ensure that all students, their learning is consistent with the nature of students who are falling behind. You see on the news most evenings the deficits in terms of learning and progress made. We're working hard in order to minimize the impact of lockdown on our kids. In order to ensure that we continue to support our children, we'll be monitoring their attendance to their online lessons. We want to know a few things about how they're getting on. We want to know that they're engaged, that they're having fun in those lessons. We want to make sure that they're making progress, albeit from home and albeit away from their expert teachers. But we want to make sure that they're still making progress, as again Ms. Horton touched on, that they're still continuing to learn new things and the curriculum continues. And then also to know that for our students, know that their teachers are still thinking about them, to have that level of connectiveness to the school, to their teachers, to their peers, is really, really important as well. Now, in terms of following up, please note that if students aren't logged in on time into their lessons, we will send out a text message. Now, some of you may have received a text message, and as Mr. Collins touched on initially, we have reworded and tweaked that text message that's gone out to parents. But the objective behind that text message is just to remind you and to our students that we do expect them to be online, and we ultimately want to make sure that they're okay. And then thirdly, to report if there are any issues that you're experiencing, that your child is experiencing with the technology, where to find resources, where to access particular pieces of work. It's really important that we keep our communication channels open so that we can assist in any way, shape or form. And again, we have staff in the background working from home in order to make sure that our kids are okay. From a safeguarding perspective, again, we're monitoring engagement. We're wanting to ensure that we're keeping contact with you and with our children, so that we are monitoring how they're getting on, that we're keeping tabs on their mood, that they're upbeat, that they're motivated, so that we can keep our community safe. So we're working really, really hard in the background to insist upon that. Our standards around behavior and etiquette in online sessions remain as they would be if they were face-to-face with their teachers. So maintaining the etiquette in terms of using the chat functions, being prompt and doing their work and submitting things on time is, again, really, really important. And then just to finish off with, again, as I started, thank you. We recognize that it's really, really tricky. I've got a 10-year-old who is quite difficult to motivate and to get online as well. So I'm experiencing, again, firsthand what many of us are going through. So thank you for the effort and the energy that it's going to take to do this. We don't know how long it's going to be for, but thank you. Thank you in advance.
This, of course, the other thing that we're very used to is at some point someone will tell you you're on mute when you're chatting away to yourself. I'm just going to go over to Mr. Burton for his question.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Firstly, a massive thank you to yourself and all the staff for putting on such a fairly slick operation over a really short period of time, and during Christmas as well. My question, or I've got a couple of questions actually, if I may. Firstly, we're seeing a lot of a mishmash of presentation styles from the teaching staff, which is only to be expected. But we have noticed that some teachers tend to present a very large amount of material in quite a short period of time. Is there any way to sort of regulate just how much work's being set, please?
Yeah, of course. I mean, what would be really good for us here, if you could email me in regards to which lessons they are, then we can have a look at those lessons and just check to see what's happening. We also want the lessons to be recorded so the students can go back to them. And if there are resources that will be useful for the student, we want them to be available for the student later on. But yeah, if you could email us that, then that's one thing we can go and look at with the head of department, just to make sure that the balance is right.
Okay, thank you. See, Ms. Horton's got her hand up.
Mrs. Horton.
Yes, I was just going to add to that, actually, that a meeting is currently going on now at the same time with heads of department, where we're discussing what kind of is working well in terms of our remote learning and where we can actually improve. And so they're collaborating at the moment on looking at the sorts of presentations they share and the amount of material. So those discussions are going on as well.
Okay, thank you.
And your second question, Mr. Burton?
Second question is probably more of a national issue. Obviously, focuses on year 11 and 13 doing GCSEs this year. Has there been any indication from central governments as to what's going to happen to those children that will be doing their GCSEs next year, given that year 10 being a GCSE learning year? has also been disrupted for this current year.
As my son is in year 10, I would also like to know what they're going to do. No, there is no indication. It was something that we spoke about to the government last year. We made this point to the government that the current year 11s had lost quite a lot of their learning in year 10. So what was the plan for that? And there was very little that came back from the government in that regards.
Okay.
Like everything in schools over the last few years, we're given things to do, and we sometimes take a bit of time to work out how we're going to do them. But in the end, we get around it and we make sure the students are okay. This year, the year 10s will lose much less of their learning because we're online. But clearly, we will know that there'll be a gap. And that's the thing that we'll come back and really assess of the students and then think about what we need to change in terms of our scheme of learning to make sure those gaps are filled.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll turn the mic over to others, but I'm sure I'll think of another question at some point soon. Thank you.
Well, if you add the question to the chat room, if we don't get to it today, then we will get back to you. So, Ms. Crawley.
Thank you.
Yeah, hi. I've got two questions, if I may. One is echoing to an extent to Mr. Burton's question about what happens to the lost curriculum from the last 12 months, because effectively my child is 12 months behind. Max has lost a huge amount of learning. We were looking at private tutoring, but obviously that's difficult now because of the situation we're in. So is there any way of seeing what the curriculum should have been like for the last 12 months and then finding a way of implementing that at home? Or is there a plan in place for the lost learning?
I think two things. Yes, one thing I've been talking about since I've arrived is publishing our schemes of learning, so you can see the topics that the students do in each of their subjects. Within the GCSE, there is some scope for choice in the departments, and that's quite an easy thing for me to get the departments to send out. So therefore, you can see what they would have been learning and therefore what they might have missed. In terms of lost learning, as a school, we had brought in some expertise in terms of tutoring to the school, and that we were going to be aiming at year 11. But of course, now without the exam, we've decided to move that into year 10. So there is an opportunity for students who are behind in some of their core subjects to get 1 to 3 tutoring, which is online. And we'll certainly be contacting parents in regards to that program. That program will happen, I would imagine, based on the fact that it's 15 weeks, it will probably happen just after Easter. So I'm working with Miss Clark and Mr. Morris in regards to which students we think would be the right people to get that tutoring. But there's no reason why you can't say to us, look, we're really concerned about our son's English, and then we can get him put into one of the English groups.
Okay, that's really useful to know. My second question is IT related, and bless her, Miss Clark has been very patient with my shortness of emails at times. Unfortunately, Max has had 0 access to Teams and to any of the lessons, and I know that Miss Clark and the other teacher, Miss Coleman, has been looking at it, and I had quite a lengthy call today with Miss Coleman about it. A real frustration from somebody who works remotely, is a key worker in the finance industry and has access to lots of IT support, is why can we not have access to some form of online ticket system so that we can talk to IT directly? Why have we got to continually come through the school, the teachers, and have it almost third party? Because it wastes so much time for everybody and ends up in frustration. You know, I'm just trying to find a quicker way back online and Max learning.
As someone that's new to ARC as a trust, I can't give you a definitive answer to that. However, I can certainly make that a question to my regional director that I'll see tomorrow, especially at this time. I don't disagree with you. I think the problem that our IT teams have had is, as you can hear from Mr. Scaife's internet connection, which went wobbled at one point during what he was saying, our staff are having some of the same issues. And so I know our IT team are very busy. However, I do take the point, Ms. Crawley, and I think that's a really great idea that we could look into. So I'll talk to my regional director about that tomorrow. And if you want to just outline to me on an email what the issues have been, I can see if I can just get the IT team to give you a hand on that. I just noticed that Miss Clark has got her hand up. So I'm just going to go to her for a second.
Hi, yeah, just very quickly, in regards to that, just a very quick update. We think we're nearly there. We think Max has been given 2 email addresses, which has not helped this situation. So Ms. Coleman is still working on that for you. But we appreciate your kind words, and I will pass those on to Ms. Coleman.
You've both been very patient, and I do appreciate it. Max has thoroughly enjoyed having part-time lessons, but there is so much home economics and PE that I can get him to do.
Yeah. Thank you. And thank you for your patience. We do recognise that there are some issues at this moment in time, but I can promise you we're absolutely doing our best to get those completed. Ms. Bates.
Hi. 2 questions really. The first one being the children. I know for my son, he wasn't quite clear on what the structure of the day was or what was expected of him.
Okay.
So that could be communicated to children, because it's me saying to him, you're following the normal timetable, you're doing normal lessons. He's like, well, I don't know what I'm doing, I can't find these documents and things. And
okay,
bit of a faff with the IT this morning, trying to find files on Teams, and the teacher he was on with didn't share her screen, so it didn't make it easy, so I'm in there trying to do it with him.
Sure. Yeah.
Just a bit faffy. I just feel like, as a teacher myself, I'm teaching online at the moment, and I totally get it and I appreciate it. I just think, I don't know if they'd benefit the first few lessons just taking them through the IT and the structure of what it's going to be like, just going forward, so that I can moan at him and nag him for expectations, because he needs it. He needs a shove up the backside. I've had the conversation about this with GCSE year, but I just think it's difficult for them at home trying to follow they haven't had any guidance themselves.
Sure.
And neither have we of what the expectations is. So it's great you're speaking to us today, but even if you could just compile it and say, this is what's expected of you, this is what we want you to do, and then I've got something I can wave in his face and be like, see, told you, this is what you should be doing.
Okay, we can solve that very quickly, and we'll get something out to all of the students tomorrow. We'll also talk to the members of staff of just working through slowly about where certain things are, sharing screens and so on. That's certainly something we can do. Thank you for that.
Brilliant. Because it was on, sorry, I'm interrupting you. Rude of me.
No, that's all right. And I was going to say, in your second question.
My second question is just that it's just difficult for them with it. It's just stressful. It's stressful for them. They're in front of a computer screen all day, and I understand that the lessons are one kind of after the other, but I didn't know if there's any scope of them just finishing just a tiny bit between, because sometimes he's gone back-to-back lessons and his eyes are done in, and you know what it's like yourself in front of a computer screen, and he just needs to move, and then he's getting himself stressed. So it's really just, my second question was, is there any scope that they could just finish a little bit earlier? I know obviously that's difficult in some, just to give them that movement break, because it's hard enough to motivate a 15-year-old anyway, but stuck in front of the computer is not helpful.
If I can assure you, with a 15-year-old at home, that I know exactly what you're talking about. I think there's lots of things here that we will be adjusting as we go forward. You know, the government made it very clear to everybody about the amount of time that students should have in online learning. We're trying to stick to that as much as possible, because we think it's really important, but we are recognizing there are some slight adjustments that we can make. For example, the community school, which are also just with us doing the online learning, they can't even go to the toilet, because we have to get a member of staff to collect them, to take them to the toilet, and to ensure that there's no bubble crossover. So they don't even have that freedom, and we're really seeing that here as well. So it is something we're looking into, and I think there's something we can do here. But thank you for that feedback, and we'll get out an information pack to students. I'll ask staff to slowly go through where things are at the beginning of a lesson, also making sure they're not trying to pack too much into the lesson. And yeah, I think it's, you know, I think they do need some moving around time. I would say while he's at home, if he is doing an independent task, then obviously he does have the freedom to get up and walk around for 5 minutes and so on. But
it was difficult this morning. I mean, I listened in on one of his lessons. I've pulled him out of his bedroom to do work in the front room, so it's driving me nuts that he's not as focused upstairs. But I listened to the member of staff, and she was going, "You've got 20 minutes to do this task." Then we couldn't find the task. Then we were faffing and shit. Right, you've only got 10 minutes left, and it's like, whoa, hold on. We've been trying to find this document. He wants to do it, and then by that point, you know what it's like. He's like, "Well, I'm not doing it." I'm like, "Well, you are. So just get on with it." I totally appreciate it. You know, logistical nightmare. I had it Thursday and Friday where I was in a minefield going, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm trying to organise these things. And this week it's been better. So I just say the only thing I've really loved is that they go on and then they're sent off to do the task and they have to upload it. That means he's got no way out of it. He's got to do his work and it's got to be uploaded. So you know, I do like that change. But thank you for answering my question.
No, we will keep adjusting. Feedback from home will be really important to us. But we do recognise sitting in front of a screen for the length of time that we're asking is a lot, and so therefore we are trying to mix things up. But we'll get better. But thank you for your feedback.
Thank you.
We are at the end of time. There was another hand up before. All I've got in front of me is John Keel, I think is the name, but I might have pronounced that.
No, that's fine. Yeah, I'll be quick. My son can't get on to do the online lessons.
Okay.
He can get. We emailed IT on Friday and they acknowledged it and said there was a problem, but they haven't got back. But you know, days are passing and he's trying to concentrate. But I was wondering if there was information about lessons online. His Spanish teacher managed to get him into one lesson.
What's his name?
Finn Moody.
Finn Moody. Okay, I will look into that and we'll get someone to give you a call tomorrow just to see where we're at to.
Hi,
Great.
Mr. Collins. Sorry, it's Miss Clark. Just very quickly, I believe, if I'm correct on that, that Miss Coleman's also on this one, but I will just ping her a quick email now to chase up where we are on that because I believe there was some IT issues. So I apologise that you've not had a response on that one.
Don't worry. Thanks.
Okay. That just leaves me to say thank you so much for your time. I know this feels quite quick. I am planning to do another one of these for all of the year groups as we go through remote learning, because at this moment in time, we're not 100% certain when this is going to end. I can't tell you how much you've appreciated the feedback we've been getting from parents. I think it's really important. It helps us make adjustments to certain things that we're doing. But, you know, again, thank you for some of you, clearly for the patience that you've shown as well, because it hasn't been an easy transfer, considering there was also the test centre to set up. But I think I'm very proud of the effort that the staff have done at Alexandra, and that's everybody. I can't tell you from a person who helps us with the cleaning all the way up to my senior leadership team. I think everyone has really put everything that they can into this. So I am really thankful that I work with such a brilliant group of colleagues. If there are any other questions that you want to ask, you're welcome to put them in the chat room and we'll catch up with those later. If you do have any questions individually that you want to find out a little bit more, then please feel free to email me. My email address is like all the other people in the school, but it's l.collins@arcalexandra.org. And I endeavour to get back to you. If it's quick, I endeavour to get back to you straight away. But sometimes I'll pick up the phone because I find it easier. Sometimes things get lost in translation in emails. But thank you so much for your time, and look forward to continuing to work with you. And I hope you have a good evening. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.